Welcome to Mind Over Matter. Today, we are joined by the wonderful Connie Warden, acupuncturist, mindfulness teacher, and author of Speeding to Compassion Life Lessons and Humor to the High Road. From yoga mats to mountain roads, Connie's journey is all about slowing down, tuning in, and choosing kindness even when life or traffic gets chaotic. Welcome to the show, Connie. It's such an honor to have you.
Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
Mhm. So, Connie, your book began with a very human moment, losing your cool behind the wheel. What made you turn that incident into a mindful lesson?
Okay. Yeah. So I was at a really a high for the day. I was going to go do some self care and get my paddle board and go on the water. I was so excited, and I go out to drive and go down the one block, turn. Then I'm behind somebody at a red light, and then the red light turned green. And oh my goodness, this person didn't move. Like they weren't even thinking of moving. And I'm like, what the heck? I kind of beep a little bit and I race around. I want to give that person a look. And then I went from Gandhi to Genghis Khan in 20 seconds. Right. I was mean. And I look at this person and then I broke my heart because I realized probably what was happening. And I scared the living daylights out of a young woman. She was like a high school woman in the driver's seat, and it looked like her mom in the passenger seat. And she was most likely out driving for the very first time. And you know, that very first drive is scary. Well, I scared her even worse. And I couldn't believe it, broke my heart. And I drove to the quarry where I was going to paddleboard, tried not to beat myself up too much for being such a jerk. And I said, I'm going to make a change. I'm going to do what I know I can do and become a better mindful, kindful driver. And that was the moment that I decided no more being like that.
Hmm. Yeah, that's amazing. And how did your perspective shift once you started applying mindfulness to everyday frustrations?
Yes. So well, actually, the first thing I did was see how much I was angry in the car or, you know, mad. And I was a lot. And so I thought, well, my goodness, you teach mindfulness, you teach yoga. Maybe you should take those things off the mat and into the car. And so the first thing is like recognizing things, like recognizing the stories you tell. I talk a lot about that because we make up stories all the time without, you know, without a lot of information. We got a story. And whether it's true or not, most likely it's not. Um, then, maybe make up a different one that's more kind. Maybe person's turning really, really slow because they have plants in the car, or maybe somebody's lost and they're driving slow because they don't know where they are. Um, Maybe they're driving really fast because the mom is having a baby. And so, if we can just change the stories to something nice, it's not so toxic for the body. And then at some point, you can get to the point where you just don't even have a story. It's, oh, slow person. Okay. Um, and so that's one of the things I did. Breathing, of course, is good. I do a little bit of EFT tapping. Uh, and I will say that I'm much a better driver. And of course, it has to do with the day. If it's a stressful day, I can see myself getting pulled into, and so that's my sign. Okay, I recognize. I'm just gonna. Uh, so the one thing that I had a really hard time with, and that was spiritual bypassing. So spiritual bypasses is pretending you're not feeling angry, pretending you're not feeling rage or jealousy, or all those ones we don't tend to like as human beings, but we all have them. And I think that one of the reasons, again, I rarely publish this book because it's such a universal experience. And in as far as driving, and if people don't have to drive, they don't probably want this book. But if you drive, you probably experience this. But it's and so how do I not spiritual bypass, not say, oh, I'm okay, I'm fine, I'm stuck in traffic, and then people are doing dumb things, and then explode later because I didn't admit that I was frustrated. And so the first thing to do is to name it. Oh, frustrated. Okay. So I've done things like make up a song about frustration in drivers, and it might be what according to the song I'm listening to on the radio, but to not spiritual bypass and say, yes, this is it. This is what I'm feeling. And that was really, really helpful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like that's so real. Because mindfulness isn't just about meditation, it's about mastering those split second reactions that shape who we are.
Yes. Yes. And so I didn't want to like everybody's heard the little parable about the grandfather who has the good wolf and the bad wolf. He's talking to his children, right? Or a grandchild. And he says, well, which one wins out, Grandpa? And he says, the one I feed the most. So the good part, instead of feeding the part that is human, the jealousy, rage, whatever. But we also have that inner nature that is a real goodness. Human beings have that, that sense of just plain goodness and love and joy. And let's feed that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And you have practiced oriental medicine and mindfulness for decades. How do those two worlds blend in understanding the mind and body?
Okay. So in oriental medicine, we deal a lot with emotions. And so they all the elements have a certain emotion that goes with it, a good emotion and a negative emotion, like the opposite. Uh, and so for example, the fire, earth, metal, water, wood, the wood element is about liver and gallbladder, but the emotion to that is being frustrated and shutting down like liver chi. I hope I'm explaining this. So you could ask me if you don't get it. So when we're frustrated and we hold back our emotions instead of metabolizing them, we shut down this energy of the wood element. And everybody really has to deal with it because, we all will tend to not metabolize our emotions. And what it does is it does a lot of damage. It actually overacts onto our digestion. It can hurt our sleep, the heart element. And so this is why this isn't going to be beneficial for me to be able to be this frustrated and angry. It's putting toxins in the body. So all the activity in the head, all that thinking and all that storytelling affects physiology in the body. And in Chinese medicine, especially, it can change these elements that affect other elements. And I liken it to if you ever see somebody yelling at the TV screen because the referee made a bad call and they're all upset and nothing's going to change. The referee is not going to change their call and you're only hurting yourself. I call that squeezing the cactus. Would you squeeze a cactus? No, it's going to hurt. So, raging at a TV screen only hurts you. And the same thing in driving and being upset.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's, yeah.
And also, do you think modern medicine is beginning to embrace that connection more seriously now?
I think they're definitely going in that direction, modern medicine. There's still a lot out there that they only have their toolbox for um, uh, what they've learned with. I'm just going to use indigenous, that didn't belong in the indigenous cultures. And that's why I love indigenous cultures. That's why I love the yoga, the Ayurvedic, the Chinese medicine. And if it hadn't been for so many people spending so much money on alternative, I put quotes, alternative medicine, they probably would not have looked at it. But they started to, and I think that kind of opened some of the modern medicine way of looking at things. I am hopeful. I am really hopeful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's like refreshing to hear how ancient wisdom and modern science can actually work hand in hand rather than against each other.
I agree. I agree. When I studied in Beijing 20 years ago, they did a lot of that. They did Chinese medicine, but they also did Western, and they would combine the two. And that was 20 years ago. So it's going in that direction.
Yeah, for sure. And your idea of kindful driving is both funny and profound. How does something as ordinary driving become a spiritual practice?
Yes. So I always meant for my journey to become a more mindful, kindful driver to bleed into the rest of my life, right? This was just an area that was going to be more directed at mindfulness and kindfulness, because this was an area that obviously is hard to sometimes for people. And I it does. Somebody was reading the book and she said, "Oh my gosh, your book is helping me understand my mom."
Yeah, 100%. And have you noticed that practicing compassion on the road changes how you handle life off the road too?
Very much so. Yes. And that's the other aspect. And that's why I called it driving to compassion, because it's not only having compassion, self-compassion, right? And having compassion, that knowing that most likely you're mad at somebody for the same thing you probably did. Run a red light, um, drive too slow, drive too fast. Uh, and when you can see yourself in other people, that's really the whole gist of this. Let's see everybody else. Everybody else can feel the same way I am, and probably does. And so to have that grace, yes, it does. This can be it's very powerful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's such a great analogy because every honk, stoplight, and detour can mirror life's deeper lessons.
Right. We have, and make an analogy to that was my medicine. That was something, or it was my poison, and I needed the medicine so that I could stop poisoning my body, my mind, right? Um, and so it was one of the things I chose.
Mm-hmm. And also, you have taught yoga for over 20 years. What keeps that practice new and inspiring after so long?
Yes. So I do in my practice, and I've done so many different styles of yoga, and coming back to the body. You do in a pose, come back to the body. How does that feel? And that is so important to get away from the story in the mind and go to the body. Go, oh, wow, I can tell my body's tense. Okay, maybe I'll go to my heart space instead of this narrative that's in my head. And I think yoga, that was really important, to take that off the mat, to learn it more on the mat, and take it to driving or in a meeting or with your kids.
Yeah, that's great. And how do you guide students to take yoga off the mat and into their relationships or work life?
That is a great question. Oftentimes I use yoga to show them how they're going to be more healthy. Like, you're going to be able to get off the floor. You won't, if you can't be independent, you can't live by yourself. But I think you gave me a great idea, and so thank you, about how to use that in relationships. Like, we do some things that are tough, right? And it's uncomfortable when we're doing balancing poses, or we're doing chair pose, and it's just kind of burning up, and we stay with it. So thank you for that, because that is kind of thing I'm going to add to my yoga, about how it's not just for your body and mind, but for your relationships. You're
Yeah.
smart.
But that's beautiful, like yoga as a living philosophy rather than just a posture practice, that making it timeless.
Yes. Yes. I mean, what better way to practice? Feeling compassion for yourself. And that's the first thing I ever do is get grounded and present. And I love it. So every time it doesn't feel rote to me to get grounded and present. I'm so glad that I take the time to do that. And that's where you can kind of go, again, use it in the relationships, with your family and people you work with. Get grounded and present, and then react. Then, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And in your journey of mindfulness, what's one misconception people still have about compassion?
Okay. I think one of the hardest thing about compassion and mindfulness is you're never going to be perfect at it. And so people go, I can't do it. It doesn't work for me. I can't I can't slow down. I can't. And yeah, it's a lifetime thing. It's the muscle you grow of being present and grounded. And you're never going to be perfect. You're going to make mistakes. And I think the one thing I really tried to do in this book is not to have shame around your imperfection. Because if we're still living on this earth, we're going to be imperfect. And just because we're doing mindfulness and meditation and do that, we're still going to be imperfect and have bad days. And so that's a misconception, that we're going to be this perfect human being. Yeah.
Yeah. And I love that reminder that compassion doesn't mean perfection. It's simply presence with kindness, even in our flaws.
Yes, I think I put that definition in there. Presence with kindness. That's a very good, just presence with kindness for yourself, for everybody else. Yeah.
And how can someone begin cultivating it when they feel too hurt or too busy to care?
I think that's when you do mini sessions. You take a mini break. You take 3 breaths, very deep, long, a longer exhale. Those 3 breaths are going to just change everything. They have that scientifically proven. You go to the bathroom, you breathe, you just take that moment. That was my way I slowed down when I had 2 children, and it was crazy. It was the bathroom. You go early to pick up your kids so you can just sit and relax for 2 minutes before chaos happens. So it's the mini breaks when we're really super busy, or you are a caretaker and you don't get many breaks. It's the mini ones.
Yeah, I love that concept, many breaks.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, what an enlightening ride with Connie Warden. She reminds us that mindfulness isn't about escaping the noise, it's about finding peace within it. Whether you're on the mat, in your car, or just navigating life's traffic, remember, every moment offers a chance to choose calm over chaos and kindness over reaction. Keep driving in the high road, and we'll see you on the next episode of Mind Over Matter.